So in this next text I mentioned a beer called Flying Dog, and as I found out they actually sell it here. So I couldn't resist and bought one. Anyways, this is now placed in New York City. They walk down the large great bridge at the corner of the street towards the subway station. Beneath him, 12 lanes of traffic rush by, either coming from or heading towards a huge gray bridge that took them across a river. He passed through a turnstile and ascended the stairs to the subway station, where the train was just pulling in. As a voice proclaimed, "Stand clear of the closing doors, please," he jumped in. The train set in motion and took him past higher and higher buildings into Manhattan. Beside a church that was dwarfed by the surrounding skyscrapers, walked into the graveyard beside it, and sat down on a wooden bench. He began to go through the pockets of his jacket on the search for something to smoke, but he already knew that there was nothing left of that dreadful herb he had brought with him from the West Coast. And in New York, marijuana was surprisingly hard to find. Finally, Dee gave up on his search and took a bottle of beer out of his backpack instead. Flying Dog, it sat on the label, below the twisted sketch of a winged creature, branded with the unmistakable brushstroke of Ralph Steadman. This beer had been brewed by a former neighbor of Hunter S. Thompson, who had endorsed the ale with the slogan, "Good people drink good beer." Was this the logical conclusion to the Gonzo brand? If Thompson's writings were so clearly linked to the consumption of drugs and alcohol, why shouldn't you make a quick buck off of that? He opened the bottle with his lighter and raised it to his lips, after carefully making sure that it was completely covered by the brown paper bag he had wrapped around it. The beer's bitter taste sent a shiver down his spine. His empty stomach clenched, and in the stinging sun he could feel the effects of the alcohol almost immediately. No wonder. He could not even remember anymore when he had last had any alcoholic beverage, with the exception of the occasional glass of wormwood. across the street that had the words American Stock Exchange on its side, written in dark iron letters. He noticed that a metal bridge led from the church doors across the street below, right to a small door in the stock exchange tower. Every once in a while, men in expensive suits walked up to the metal gate at the other end of the bridge and opened it with some kind of key card they pressed against it in order to cross over. Back out of the graveyard and found himself in the shady canyons of Wall Street. He walked up to the statue of Washington and ascended the steps beside him. It still looked exactly like the last time he had been here. But when he looked over at the stock exchange at the other side of the street, there was no longer a gigantic American flag hanging from its columns. Instead, they now held a big billboard for shoes. This seemed to expose the sad truth that this institution was no longer working for the American people, was entirely at the hands of corporations instead. Suddenly, a man appeared in one of the windows of the building opposed to the stock exchange and began to hoist a black flag with a picture of a blue octopus on it. That was supposed to mean, but all he could make out on the facade of the building was the slogan, "You can't launch new ideas on old thinking." Dee took another sip of the beer and then headed back towards the church and down Broadway until he reached Sigurd Park. He sat down on one of the marble benches and let his gaze wander over the trees that grew out of the concrete, trying to remember how long it had been since this park had been occupied by protesters, pillaring the greed of the financial industry that had led to a global economic crisis, which the aftershocks could still be felt today. But nothing remained of the tent city the activists had erected in this place. Before the park had been cleared by the police, some kind of class system had supposedly developed within the tent town. While some people were forming drum circles and smoking pot at one end of the park, others, at its opposite side, were equipped with tablet computers determined to negotiate with the stockbrokers, and in the end even gathering in the lobby of one of the banks they were protesting against. He looked down at the clock on his touchscreen and realized that it was time to head further up Broadway to meet Y, who would be getting off work soon and who wanted to attend some kind of convention for biohackers afterwards. D opened the mail Y had sent him earlier and began to read the event description. Biohackers of New York, unite! A venue for multidisciplinary discussions that go on beyond qualification of human biologic function to include ideas for how to optimize human performance across multiple domains, including physical, mental, emotional, and social. The presentations will span the gamut from the socio-cultural aspects of human health to the technologies and nutritional inventions that can enhance cognition, athletic performance, and sense of general well-being. Biohackers NYC takes a broader view of biohacking compared to the original biopunk movement, or DIY bio, where experimentation with DNA and other aspects of molecular biology is a core element. The current health paradigm from an illness focus to a wellness focus. Anyone interested in the integration of sociology, biology, technology, wellness would find this of interest. Y wanted to go there in order to meet potential partners for another one of his business schemes. He had shown D his designs for manufacturing and distributing machines for gel electrophoresis, and told him of his plans to buy a 3D printer in order to start in the next few weeks. At least he's not genetically engineering fish again, so that the cancer cells he infects them with glow in the dark, D thought, as he walked past various hot dog and kebab vendors that were cheap, but not cheap enough for him. He was ripped out of his thoughts by the appearance of a man with a white frame on his nose, holding a small glass screen right in front of his right eye.